All right, so with our gorgeous Miss Phoenix, we did sneak out for a little potty break for her, and she did a good job. She is getting much more comfortable coming in and out of the building, though you can see a little stress yawn. So, as I was mentioning a little bit earlier with our gorgeous gal, we want to make sure that whatever we're working on is going to help create the behaviors we'd like for down the road. So, for some babes, working in certain dynamics are too challenging and at times then could be not, again, not a great option, but there's other venues that might fit her needs a little bit better. So when it comes to our gorgeous gal, I always tell my students that I love the benefits of doggy day school, but a lot of times if we're struggling with a dog that's not as comfortable, working with the family is going to be really important. So just like it mentions on the doggy day school, the commitments paperwork that we designed, so folks would know, what their end also entails. So a lot of times people sometimes think of training almost like where it could be like plumbing. So if there's a broken piece to your pipe, if you just replace the piece, it's going to magically work perfect. When it comes to training, you're going to be also working with feelings and learned history and previous life experiences or lack thereof, sometimes negative experiences as well. So when we're dealing with working with a dog behaviorally or working with some skills, we have to address kind of where is the dog starting at and what have they been rehearsing for months to years. So if our little lady has always been a little timid or a little bit apprehensive, even though coming here seems like a good potential for building of skills, it could be a great venue for some. I've had other shy dogs that the same thing where we were able to progress and work a few skills, but because the dog's comfort range wasn't there, neither was the progression or the ability to learn much more dramatic or change in behavior from this point, starting. So we may find for her a better course might be to, for example, involve you as well. Like I mentioned a little earlier, with either a beginner program, maybe my sensitive dog class program, or for example, one-on-ones, I find can be really beneficial because then the benefit of that, like I tend to tell most of my clientele, is that I want you to be part of the learning process. So, to me, seltzer. So even though you sign the commitment document stating that that what you have to work on would be what I recommend for homework and then you practice at home too, is that sometimes for some puppies, what they might be dealing with for behavior can be easier when working all together. So that way we have her feelings of safety, which promotes even more learning. So right here, she's kind of vegging. It's not because she's finally feeling more comfortable per se, but more because she's like a little bit pooped out. So there's going to be moments where when you're working on skills, even at home, you want to look to her comfort range and what is she telling you. So for a lot of dogs, it's not really that warm in here. If they were wrestling and running and it was really hot, then we would see panting. I know we kind of dived into this a little bit earlier. She's just kind of listening to me as I'm blabbing away. Is that she is doing a bit of stress panting. She's pacing a little bit. She was kind of looking for the door, but then she did go to the restroom, so it was maybe a potty break. But a lot of times if, let's say, for example, the puppy's comfort range isn't quite where we need it to be, this doesn't mean we can't get progression. But I always tell people, view it almost like with us. If you didn't know how to do a certain skill and I forced you to do the highest level of that thing, you're probably going to fail miserably. So if let's say you didn't know how to drive and I put you in, let's say, a very fast sports car and I said, let's hop on the highway, we may not make it. So there's going to be moments where, same thing for dogs, is sometimes we expect to apply this and that, and then magically we get like an equation and everything is great. There's going to be moments where certain days she feels more comfortable, certain days she feels a little bit less comfortable. So just like with us, we have days where some of us are ready to rumble, and then other days we're like, we're going to just want to stay in bed today. So with our little lady, even though she's kind of feeling a little bit more comfortable, she was not to the point where she was ready to do meets and greets. Two, when it comes to having other big dogs, is if she's never really had lots of new friends, the problem is, just like with us, we may have a couple good friends, but if, let's say, some random person comes at us trying to hug and caress our hair and maybe smooch us, and we don't know them, we also are going to get into some defensive type behavior. So just like with us as people, if we don't feel safe, we go into fight or flight. Oh, sorry, I'm a terrible shot. Take that one. She's like, now I have to get up again. So the trouble with going into fight or flight is that, not that, again, your dog is doing it on purpose. Remember that fear is involuntary. So it's almost like a response, like a hiccup or a sneeze. It's kind of one of those situations where it's no longer the thinking part of the brain, it's instinctual. It's trying to save itself so it could go live another day. So she's often exploring, checking out the environment again. So, but when it comes to your babes, you want to think about, how does my dog feel? When they feel unsafe, that's when your F's come out: fidget, fawn, freeze, and fight. When your dogs are feeling comfortable, they are smooth, they're wiggly, they're soft, they're flowy. I almost call them like wet noodles. They have no rigidness, and they're very, very soft looking. If your babe does not feel comfortable, that is where you see those bigger behaviors. So there's going to be times where maybe your babe may have started with a whisper, like growling or trying to avoid a situation or scuttling backwards. And then if we just kept going, then sometimes behavior gets bigger because they feel there's no way for us to kind of listen, that they've had enough, or this is too flustering. So if you also think about it from the dog's perspective, it's kind of weird to be strapped to equipment and then being kind of walked around places, being told what to do and what not to do, especially when sometimes culturally it doesn't make sense to you. So from the dog's perspective, nice job checking in, cutie. So we might grab another little tidbit for our little Miss P. Here you go, cutie. She does sort of like her little chicken snacks as well, but I feel that she's been going a little bit quicker to some of the other little tidbits. Ready? We'll do another little find it. Good job. So I might do a little kissy noise, see if she wants to come do a little, even if with the kissy noise, the positive interrupter, I'm looking for her when she looks in my direction after hearing the sound, then I might mark it and feed it. I'm also just in general sometimes just feeding for existing. So I want her to think that there could be value in being in this weird little place with me. Ready? We'll do another little find it. But with our gorgeous gal, back to feeling safe or unsafe, and sort of the weird things that we expect out of dogs, is remember that from her perspective, no dog walks up to another dog and says, would you like to do some loose leash walking, or come when called, or do a down stay? So I know we're not expecting instant basic obedience out of her, but we were hoping to kind of get a couple little comfortable skills that could help her with some of that sensitivity when she's struggling. So I'm just grabbing some of the chicken ones that she likes a bit better. So we'll do a little, again, little feeding for just kind of, oh, and there goes my AC. So there's a funny noise for the gorgeous gal. So for some babes, they are more sensitive, which means that if, let's say, the world is typically a bit overwhelming for them, we may have to view it from her perspective and try to work softer venues. So I always recommend, try to lower the criteria, make the situation seem more comfortable from their perspective. And if we're thinking about the way she's feeling versus what she's doing that we don't like, and view it as her struggling, we're going to have a much better availability to help her along the way and change and potentially help create more comfort. Ready? Do a little find it. She's like, that AC poking on was a bit too spooky. So with the gorgeous gal, what I would recommend is, I'm going to dive into some topics with you and see how you're feeling, see what you'd like to do. I feel like this program might be a little bit too fast of a step for her, and we'll dive into more of what could maybe be a better setup and then go from there. This doesn't mean she can't keep coming. If you would like her to keep trying, and we'll slowly just go at her rate. I just want families to always understand that because I am a certified fear-free trainer, I'm not going to force a dog to work skills that they're not ready for, or push social situations that would actually have the exact opposite effect of what we want for her to feel. So for some folks, they might be like, oh, the only way to get her comfortable with other dogs is literally throw her in the deep end and hope she learns how to swim. So we don't want to set her up where she's going to go into a social situation and now feel even more overwhelmed because she felt nervous and then the scary thing happened, and no matter what she said, it was still just there. And that's something we want to avoid even for us, let alone them. So for the little gorgeous gal, I would say for now, she's been doing a pretty good job for date number 2. But you'll see that her difference in behavior, and this doesn't mean that you guys have done anything wrong. So remember that everybody's babes are starting at a different point, different comfort range, different genetics. And this is what I discuss all the time with my sensitive dog students, is that for some of them, maybe they themselves are not as fluid with certain things, and that's okay. So just like with us as people, just because one person is really good at art doesn't make them less of a person if they're not as good at math. So there's going to be moments where some dogs struggle with certain topics, some do much better. This doesn't mean that there isn't growth or room for growth, but it means that we have to go at their rate and with them being part of the equation. So for our little lady, you can see that she's not really going for the food right now, and she's a little bit unsure and just kind of hanging off to the side. We may find, like I mentioned a little bit prior, working with you and her together with me kind of helping along the way, I think might be a much better suit for this gorgeous gal. So remember that my main goal as a trainer and to help you with behavior is to set up both your dog and you for greater success. And in doing so, we want to make sure that her welfare is in mind. And this is where I want to make sure that if a dog does come, they're being successful. So right now I'm getting a little bit even less engagement than I did the first day with certain skills when it comes to checking in. So I want to make sure that this is a good match for her. And that's where we're going to discuss a little bit more after class, maybe today. So, but for day number 2, Miss P did a pretty well-rounded job, but we're maybe going to give her a little breather because she's feeling a little tired, and then we'll see how she does throughout the day as well with some social moments to her level of comfort.